Broadcasting live from Studio One high atop the WVOX Tower. This is Westchester's only locally owned and operated community station for you and yours for more than 50 years. 1460 WVOX.
WVOX. Welcome to Slow Medicine Radio. Our host is integrative medicine Dr. Michael Finkelstein. Michael offers medical advice from a holistic paradigm, including both medical and metaphysical philosophies from the full spectrum of human experience. Slow Medicine Radio offers fresh ideas on how to attain a state of wellness that seems distant given the limitations of today's medical paradigm. It introduces you to thought leaders who connect the dots between theory and practice, examining health from a broad perspective with regards to medical diagnoses, conventional and alternative therapies, healthcare policy, and related topics that warrant further thought and discussion. Slow Medicine Radio does not prescribe to take this or do that. Instead, it offers an open-minded, intelligent, and practical approach to living, resulting in greater health individually and collectively. Here is Dr. Michael Finkelstein, the founder of Sunraven, the home of slow medicine in Bedford, New York.
Welcome to Slow Medicine Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Finkelstein, and today the show is going to be about you, your health. Last week I had a rebroadcasting of my original show which describes slow medicine, and today I want to talk to you about it. So I want to invite you to call. The number is 636-0110, and in fact, I'm going to give a copy of my book, Slow Medicine, Hope and Healing for Chronic Illness, to the first person who does call. And I want to talk to you about the things that you believe are affecting your health when you're interested in hearing from a perspective, perhaps, that you haven't heard from, which is somebody who's gone through the conventional route but believes there's something beyond that that can really help us. And just to let you know, you're listening to WVOX 1460 on your AM dial, and you can also tune in or advise others to tune in on worldwide at WVOX.com. And of course, again, my hope is that through our conversations, you will find a way to achieve the state of health that you would really like. So again, call in 914-636-0110, and I'll take any question about your health. To start, maybe to get you thinking, when I spoke with Bob Marone this morning on his show, in preparation for this one, he asked me what I was going to talk about. And one of the things that I think is worth describing is how aggravation affects our health. You know, we often know that there are a lot of things that bother us. We can be right now in traffic. We could have just had an argument with our boss. We may be quarreling with our husband or wife or worried about our kids. Money is usually a big issue, and our health, of course, and how we feel in our bodies and mind is always nagging us. So the question is, how does that contribute to how we're going to do? And I have to tell you that whether you realize it or not, that feeling of stress, the aggravation, has a cellular effect that's counterproductive when you think about your health, meaning the fight or flight response, the stress response, the adrenaline that pours out of your adrenal gland in response to something aggravating will flood your body with hormones and neurotransmitters that change how your body functions. The idea behind it originally was to help you run faster away from a threatening animal like a lion or a bear. But the fact is, in our modern world, we're living in a way that turns that switch on and leaves it on. Traffic is a great example. For 45 minutes driving home instead of getting home in 15, you're perseverating over the effects of being late. I just heard a commercial right before this show about mowing your lawn and doing it with something that will help you do it faster. And I can understand wanting to do chores more quickly, but the idea is that we're constantly bombarded with ideas and images of moving faster, getting more done. And the question is, when do you relax? When do you let go? How do you get that switch from on to off so that you can restore yourself into neutrality, which is essential for cellular function and for the health that you want? Again, I invite your questions, 914-636-0110, and I think there actually is somebody who's on the line. Kim
Hello.
From New Rochelle. I'd love to hear what you're thinking about.
Yes. Well, I have to say that when I start to feel anxious and have a lot of anxiety, I always try to live within the moment and to block out everything else that is going on around me.
Well, I think that's a great strategy. In fact, without having tools that you can use to shut that switch off, we wind up, feeling that constant pressure. Anxiety, happens to all of us. We can't avoid the things that upset us, but we can affect how we respond. And so what do you do? specifically? How do you tell me
well,
what you do.
I try to do is meditate and try to envision that basically that the world is stopping for just a moment and that I can catch my breath and that I'm able to process what's going on around me. And it actually makes it a lot easier when I start to get tensed up or even feeling depressed for that matter.
How long have you been doing that?
I've been doing it now for about the past year.
Right. Was there something? Yeah, go ahead. I was going to ask, is there something that prompted you to begin that practice? Was there a moment in time when you realized this was catching up with you, or did you have a condition, if you're willing to share, or something that had been going on in your life that prompted you to look for something like this?
Oh, sure. Basically, what prompted me to start doing this was that I was suffering severe anxiety attacks, and I found that I all of a sudden would start to see images going in and out. Then I would start to get a very tense feeling, especially in my chest, the pit of my stomach. So I started researching different ways to try and alleviate the anxiety. And I found that the best way was through meditation, or sometimes just if I'm at home and some of your listeners, if they have access to a smart TV or smartphones, any of that, if they go onto YouTube, they can actually get meditation videos, which will actually put them in a better frame of mind.
That's wonderful that you bring this up, because one of the principal practices that I recommend when I think of slow medicine is, we need something to bring us out of that moment where we're feeling anxious, tight, frenzy state. And for many people, there's not just the feelings and the emotions that arise, but there's a physiological effects. Your blood pressure rises, your heart rate rises. Now imagine if that was going on every day for many days, for many years, what kind of drain that would have, not only of your energies, but what kind of effects it has on the inside of your arteries, on the other organs of your body. And so whether or not you're doing this, for the moment, or you're thinking of this as a long-term strategy, I think what you're doing yourself has had to have had a great effect. How do you feel now? I mean, with this over the year, are you finding not only is this a tool for the moment, or are you actually experiencing something beyond that, which is they happen less often, these types of moments that provoke stress?
Definitely, that the amount of stress that I'm feeling has definitely subsided. My anxiety attacks, while they have not gone away completely, they have diminished, I would say, about 80%. And I just generally feel less depressed, and definitely I have much more energy.
Yeah. And, the interesting thing to me, and when I think of what I learned in medical school, what I didn't learn in medical school, this was not something that came up, at least not in 1986 when I graduated. In the interim, there have been a little bit more thoughts about this in medical curriculum, but for the most part, it's interesting. Doctors would probably rather give you a prescription for a medication to alleviate your symptoms than to walk you through what you just said to me and to everyone listening about a strategy that could work. Now, of course, you might need some help with it. Practice, like you said, now on the internet in a lot of forms are, guidance, literal guidance, videos and talking you through it. There are so many books and tapes, recordings of all sorts that are available. So what frustrates me a little bit, and I imagine it frustrates many of you, is that when you go to a doctor and you explain that you're not feeling well, you have a symptom, that instead of strategies like this, which will turn that sympathetic rush switch from on to off, you get a medication which, sure, it might work in the short term, but it doesn't work long term. And what you just said, Ken, too, about how this is happening less often, this was a beautiful approach to taking better care of yourself, which you did for yourself. And I commend you for that. And thank you for calling.
Thank you very much.
So, when I want to describe for you is a little bit more physiologically what was just described, which is that when we feel anxious, usually it's a thought, or something comes through our subconscious mind, an image, as Ken described, or, something happens, we almost get into an accident. We feel our heart skip a beat and then it's pounding. We get that rush of adrenaline. It takes something called the parasympathetic nervous system to shut that off, which is stimulated by a nerve that's in our body. It's actually located in the diaphragms, underneath the lungs, above the abdomen. And when you take a deep, deep breath and stretch those diaphragms apart and down, you wind up stimulating those nerves, and then the sympathetic nervous system goes off. What Ken described as meditation he used is not something you can do when you're driving your car. However, you can take a deep breath. You can learn to do abdominal breathing, among other things. And then this will shut that wave of energy that is, again, when it's not a lion really chasing us, it's somewhat toxic to our system. It could motivate us in certain other ways, but chronically on, this is what's plaguing us. When I think of all the people who've come to me with medical conditions, and I think of all the things that they get from doctors, mostly medications or procedures, again, it's interesting to me that this is not universally recommended, because this gets our body into a healing state, to the condition where we're less likely to get sick to begin with and more rapidly able to recover once we are sick. Classic studies on this are an example is when college students or medical students are stressed because of final exams, which is going on around now in many high schools and colleges throughout the country. Young people are more susceptible to common viruses at this time. They actually looked at herpes simplex virus, oral herpes, and outbreaks, which are easy to observe, and that the incidence is much higher in students during their period of finals. That's an example of how the body becomes more susceptible to a condition, a disease, albeit one that's not terrible, but one that is annoying. Imagine what happens in your body if that happens thousands and thousands of times over years in terms of the impairment in your immune system, the impairment in your cardiac function, the impairment in how organs like liver and kidney work, because they're similarly stressed and strained by a condition such as even the thoughts of having a big test or a job interview or an aggravating conversation with somebody. These are the things that go on in our lives. In fact, we live in this fast, rush world, and I think it's the common denominator for most of what ails us, or at least it's something that could make it more likely that we're going to get sick to begin with. Again, I invite you to call number 914-636-0110. I'm just wondering if somebody out there has a medical condition and they haven't tried something and they've been to doctors and they've been getting advice like take this pill or do that pill, or even maybe some of you have pursued complementary alternative practices, and share your experiences with what you think you might get from those or what you wish you got from your doctor. To me, this is a common call to my office, which is, isn't there something else I could do? In fact, let me tell you a personal story on that subject. When I was 40, this is almost 20 years ago, and I was in the prime of my medical practice and career, if you will. I was the medical director of a hospital. I was the chief of the Department of Internal Medicine. I had a very big private practice. I was married and had 3 children, which was my dream. So I had everything that you might think was desirable. And in fact, I was feeling pretty good about all those accomplishments. But my blood pressure started to rise, and I started to get indigestion quite often. And when I went to my doctor, he said, Michael, I think it's time for you to take medications. And I said to him, isn't there something else? Which was exactly what my patients said to me every time I would want to prescribe them a drug for a chronic condition that had just developed. And I realized at that time, once I said it myself, how critical that question is and how poor the medical establishment is in providing an answer. And so it was around that time that I said to myself, well, I'm going to find out this answer because, one, I wanted to apply it for myself, but I realized how essential it was for me, if I wanted to be a really good doctor, to learn more about answers that I could provide my patients. And that's what I did. Not that long after that, I went back to study integrative medicine with the pioneer in the field, Andrew Weil. Many of you may know him. I kept my job for the moment, but as I started to study more and more about other ways that people heal and feel stronger, have higher quality lives, not just quantity issues, but quality, I realized how much more I could offer people. And my blood pressure went down as I started to meditate like Ken did. I started to breathe a little bit more often. I started to move my body in ways that I had recommended to my patients. I did more gardening. I did more writing. I did some meditating. all of that contributed in a fairly short period of time to my blood pressure going from 140 over 90, which is the magic number when doctors often say, gee, it's time to start medications, down to 120 over 70, and it's remained there ever since. So I want to advise this. I think this is what we all need, whether you even know it or not. Your long-term health, even your short-term feelings of how you are doing today when somebody says to you in the morning how you feel, how you doing. Most of us give a very short answer because we really don't want to get into the full story. But the truth is we have a full story. And unless we have tools to deal with some of that inner world, the conversations that we have with ourselves and the way we're affected by all that's moving around us, we wind up with, as most of you know, as we get older, more and more conditions that limit how we function and feel. And they really change the quality of our lives. So most of what I want to talk about, most of what slow medicine is about restoring quality. And in that, the important irony and the beauty of it is that the quantities improve. Like my blood pressure went down, your health numbers, whether it's your blood pressure, your heart rate, your cholesterol, how long you live, improve. Because the body responds really well to finding balance and harmony. So again, maybe you have a story, 914-636-0110, and a question. And to entice you further, the next person who calls will also get a copy of my book. And you can leave that with Nick, who will answer the phone. And I will send that book, Slow Medicine, Hope and Healing for Chronic Illness, to you, as it outlines much of what I talk about, which are ways of identifying how you're doing through questions that are insightful and thought-provoking, get you to take an inventory of your own state of health so that you can look for opportunities and then hear some suggestions about how you can actually move from a state of feeling tense, tight, anxious, tired. Maybe you're actually hearing from other people how you look, not so good. You may not like what you see in the mirror in the morning. Your relationships may break down. Your work can feel dissatisfying. All those things are symptoms. And the idea is that there are ways of, without changing the outer world, change the inner landscape so that you respond in such a way that those things don't affect you the way that they have in the past. Again, when I spoke with Don this morning, he was invited me to sort of share in a word, more or less, what I wanted to talk about, and I came up with aggravation. His response, of course, was something that I think is going on for a lot of us now, is in witnessing the political debates, particularly in the presidential politics. We're seeing behavior that I would say is frankly unpresidential. That's my opinion. And it worries us. No matter who you may be for or against, I think the two front runners, for the most part, both have issues. Of course, everyone does. So I don't want to be overly critical, and I'm not into sharing getting into the politics of it. But the idea is that often I see in people witnessing this, rising frustration and upset. It's fine then to apply that in a way that motivates change, and eventually we'll vote for one or two of these people, and eventually we'll have a new president. This will be, in the short term, over with. But what's happening to you as you're watching all these debates, all these issues, worried about the future? What's going on in your own cells? How is that affecting you? Do you realize that when you listen and observe somebody who upsets you, that the redness on your face, the lump in your throat, the nausea that you might experience are physiological responses to thought? This is how our body responds to everything. And so when people question, well, is there a mind-body medicine? Is there an effect of the mind on the body? You know from your own experience that there is. And if you had a tool or a set of tools to intercept how that happens, and therefore maybe moderate the negative effects that could have, particularly when it's intense and chronic, you would be far better off. And that's what I want to share with you. So maybe I'll give you a taste of it. And let's talk about abdominal breathing, which I had mentioned earlier. Let's say you're even in your car and you're in traffic right now, or you're a little late, or you're going to have a big night tonight because you got a whole bunch of other stuff to do when you get home. And you're feeling that all in your body right now. You're feeling it in your face. Your neck is tense. Let's say you're home, you're preparing dinner for your family. Let's say you're worried about your 17-year-old getting his driver's license. This is having an effect on you. So if you took your heart rate now, and I'm not suggesting you take hands off the wheel if you happen to be driving, but if you can imagine what your heart rate is, and let's say the average is around 70, and you could feel blood rushing through your face, the breathing exercise that I'm going to describe for you essentially could quiet that down. So this is what you need to do. So the first thing you do is try to move your body, wiggle it a little bit so that you're a little bit more square in whatever position that you're seated in. This is one of the important techniques. This is not meditation, so you don't have to cross your legs and you don't have to close your eyes even. You're just really trying to get your body relaxed. In fact, you might notice that one part of your body or another is particularly tense, like the back of your neck, or you're gripping one hand, or your foot is gripping, or your backside feels tense on one side, not the other, or you notice one area of your body that perhaps is the most pronounced. In fact, I'd ask you to draw your attention to that area. Now what I want you to do is contract that area even more. See if you can contract it, and then let it relax. And do that a second time. And do that a third time. Okay. Now wiggle with that knowledge of where that is, and see if you can wiggle free a little bit of that tension. Okay. Now sit square. Now you're going to concentrate on your breath. So what you're going to do is you're going to exhale first. Maybe counterintuitive, but first you're going to breathe out your normal exhale, and then you're going to breathe in. And you're going to do that now consciously aware of exhaling and inhaling, usually several seconds each. It's not important how deep at the moment. Get a sense of your own natural rhythm. Now what I want you to do is exhale deeper than usual. When you inhale a little bit more slowly and deeper than a normal inhale. And try to count to 7 when you inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now hold your breath for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4, and exhale over 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Do that again. Inhale for 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale for 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so now just sit there relaxed. Now go back to your normal breathing. If you can imagine your heart rate right now, or your energy, or just listening to me count, the likelihood is that you were pulled away from whatever was going on in your body in that one tense spot, or what was going on in your life even, and for a brief moment, in just maybe 1 minute, you have pulled yourself out of the fight or flight response. Now that is available to you at any time, that you're consciously aware that you're a little tense. You can do that in the bathroom in the middle of a difficult conversation on a first date. You could do that before you speak to your kids about coming home too late or the mess they left in their bedroom. There's all sorts of opportunities, even before a difficult, important meeting. This will help you function. This will bathe your cells in something that's actually quite positive and healing. And in the future, over the next couple of weeks and months, as I talk to you, I'm going to talk to you more about how this applies, how this helps you, and I want to invite you then to call in and discuss with me those things that really challenge you, not only the life conditions that really challenge you, but the health ailments that you have, so that I can show you how this and other things actually apply to what you're doing. And that's the essence of slow medicine, and that's what Slow Medicine Radio is all about. So thank you for listening. It's always a pleasure to be given an opportunity to speak to people about their health and well-being. That was my intention way back when I decided to be a doctor. And if I can encourage you to think of these things for the next week, and when I'm back in a week, we can speak about them more. If you want to learn more about slow medicine, you can go to the website, slowmedicine.org. You can also learn more about the Slow Medicine Foundation, which sponsors this show. I want to thank WVOX and all of our listeners. for their time and for Ken for calling in. And for the next week, think about breathing. Think about getting yourself out of fight or flight. Think about the health and healing that is possible. And we'll speak more. Be well.